Welcome back to the Kilowatts, specifically Kilowatt Hour. Today I'm joined by my friends Lacee, Raj, and Ricky from Bit da Vinci, and we're going to be talking about everything electric vehicles. It has been a crazy week for electric vehicles. Everything from our Cybertruck sightings, plural Cybertrucks, to just today, this morning, an unexpected email with Rivian rolling back some of their kind of price hikes. So I just wanted to sit down and chat with you guys, kind of get your opinions. And instead of just texting behind the scenes or tweeting publicly, I figured this is a great opportunity for us to all get together, chat about our opinions on what's going on in the EV industry today. And yeah, just share it with everyone. And again, we're going to be accepting comments and questions as we go along. But yeah, just high level, how's everyone feeling today?
Recovering from all the onslaught of news, both good and bad and exciting, and I think that's the era, that's the field that we're in, right? So it's good stuff.
Absolutely.
It's a roller coaster of emotions.
Yes, perfect way to describe
Some of us on here are pre-order holders for the Rivian R1T or R1S, and so as all of you know, this is a very interesting time, ups and downs. I did not cancel mine. I held on, and I am still feeling like, I mean, does anyone else feel just like heartbroken still? Like sad? Also like slightly happy, but
yeah,
I'm in a glass case of emotions.
I'm with you there. Let's start off. Ricky and Raj, do you guys also have a reservation? Because I do. I'm planning on getting an R1S, but I currently have an R1T order, which makes this even more complicated for me. Do you guys have, do you guys have orders?
I'll say for me, I do not. But the weekend right before the announcement, I actually had configured an R1S, and I was looking at my wife, and I'm like, this price is not bad, and it's pretty close to Model Y pricing, but yet I feel like you're getting so much more. We did not pull the trigger, which I was kind of like, haha, I didn't pull the trigger because I would have been screwed. And now I'm like, oh, I could have locked in a price now. Roller coaster. You're right, Lacee.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had even locked in a week ago, they would honor that price today? You didn't have to be like an early reservation holder from years ago?
March 1st was the date. They said man. If you had a pre-order before March 1st, then they would honor your price.
Yeah.
Shoot. Okay, well now I feel kind of bad because I don't have one either. And I think the R1S is probably like my favorite EV right now, like the one I would want. I just like the idea that it's a big SUV. Never been a fan of the X from Tesla. The Rivian R1S would have been cool. But no, I don't have reservation.
Yeah, the R1S is absolutely one that I'm looking at. Just like it is kind of that full size Land Rover. I grew up in an LX 470, and that was a big SUV that took the whole golf team and whatnot, a whole soccer team, whoever. And I've always wanted a big SUV like that. And the Model X isn't that. And so to finally have kind of like pickup trucks, to have a real big SUV, I feel like the EV6 and the Ioniq 5 are SUVs today, but really we're all talking about like full size SUVs. I'm excited about that, and I'm now just nervous that my R1T reservation, because for the channel I want an R1T, but if it takes too long and I can get an R1S, personally I want an R1S because I'm Cybertrucks and all that. But it'll be interesting because now I don't know if I can change. Where before I could just change freely, and I literally did once a month. I was flip flopping.
Well, don't worry, so are they. So.
Well, what's interesting is like there's so much chatter right now about like their approach to this, because that I feel like is the interesting part of it all, is because they built a culture around like this perfect demographic that is so like community focused and caring, and so obviously this is going to hit them the hardest because these are the type of people that they are pitching to when they do this kind of activity, but with the price hikes. But why did they decide to do it? And I think that they have to do something in order to stay above water in the future. But why do you guys think that they decided to go about it this way initially without the pre-orders staying at their original prices?
Great question. So just real quick, high level, I do want to establish kind of the way that I want us to approach all these topics. We jumped into one already, but basically a high level for the show for Kilowatt Hour going forward. What I want to do is have us, basically talk about what is the order at hand, where do we stand on kind of that issue, talk about how we feel about it, and then kind of move on, whether it's 10, 15 minutes per topic. And again, there's a lot to talk about this week. We'll have this show for about an hour. But yeah, I think this is a great example where we kind of talked about where we are and now how do we feel about it? So yeah, why do we feel like they had to do that? And the other half, just a little bit response to you, Lacee, is like, now I'm like, how are they going to afford to not do it for everyone that has a reservation? They've got 2 years of reservations that they, at least it seems like they had to charge that much, and now they're not going to charge that. So I'm worried in a way. That doesn't seem good for a business.
Yeah,
I would agree. It was concerning, right? When they, I think this topic has been brought up before. I saw it on Tesla or on Twitter, was that Tesla did something similar back in the Roadster days where they hiked the price up by 10K. And so the argument always comes down to is that had Tesla not done that, could they be where they were today, right? When a company chooses to do that, it's a pretty significant thing to do, to now tell all your customers that invested, says, hey, actually, we need more money because we miscalculated. So there's part of it that you could look at as like, Rivian, how could you miss this? But then the other aspect of it is like, well, they're new, they're figuring it out. But I do want to call attention to kind of the way that letter was written when they kind of backpedaled themselves. There was a lot of focus on, apologizing and rebuilding trust, because this kind of broke that. It's all over the place. But I do fear for the future. I don't know. The last thing you want is to invest in a vehicle and then that company cease to exist in, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, we just got a comment saying, I'm sure the Amazon vans will keep them afloat until they can get production to higher prices. So that, if that, that's one thing we don't talk about, is that the pricing for consumers, they're relatively low numbers compared to Amazon. But Ricky, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think first of all, they're in the process of being at higher levels of production, which means they're thinking about this more. And to Roger's point, they set this price before a global pandemic, before shortages of a bajillion varieties, and now they're being held to that price. And I think there is reason to be a little bit nervous because, well, they have 2 years of reservations. I don't know if anyone has any numbers on how many Rivian reservations there are, but being locked into like a losing proposition. Well, do you know?
I think it was 70,000, I believe, something like that.
Oh, okay. That's actually not much, honestly. It's like that was like 2 hours of like the Cybertruck reveal. So 70,000 is not terrible, but I mean, imagine if it was 1 million, right? And they're stuck at this price, and imagine losing money per model. And again, to Roger's point, 70,000 is actually a pretty good price point, right? Because like a Range Rover, the Range Rover that I want is $100,000 for a stupid gas car. So the price was actually quite good. I mean, it's not cheap, right? It's not for everyone, but it was a pretty good price. And now if they're losing money for 70,000 trucks, it's not good news. And also the other bad news for people who have reservations will be their strategy might be, well, in order to be able to afford this, loss, we have to shift focus to Amazon trucks or other revenue streams, and which means it might be a lot longer before those 70,000 people get their trucks just so they can stay afloat. But ideally, that'd be better than running themselves aground, right?
I think the biggest thing here is communication, right? Is that, how could Rivian have done this differently? I don't think anyone's faulting, them. I mean, it was a sour move, but if you think about it, right, Ricky brought this up, is that we just went through a pandemic. They had a breakup with Ford, which was a big investor, and then Amazon is now I think they bought an undisclosed number of electric vehicles from another manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like these questions of like, well, is Rivian losing that investment, that money, the backing that they had? Because when they came in, it looked real strong. Here's a brand new company building a really cool first electric truck to market, an SUV. It's got backing of Amazon. It's got backing of Ford. So people are like, whoa, this is big. And if some of that stuff's trailing off, the pandemic's throwing curveballs into pricing of parts and shipping, it's understandable. But I think the communication is where they could have focused on and being very transparent about that.
Here's my thought, is that like, I'm this has been a whirlwind, but I feel as if they could have seen some of this coming, one, and then they could have potentially increased the prices for reservation holders by less. If the average consumer saw a 10% or $10,000 increase who already had a reservation, and then 20% if you don't have a reservation, I think that's like the part where I'm like, wow, to kind of, and I feel as almost as if they had to do this, that they kind of swung us to one side, and now as I think Raj, it was you that said build trust. To rebuild trust, they almost had to swing all the way back, and that's kind of where I'm like, wow, that's just a lot of money.
Yes.
Lacey?
I just want to say this is kind of an interesting take that I've been thinking about a lot, because Laura Schwab, who used to be the president of Aston Martin of the Americas, had moved from there to Rivian, and she was in the sales and marketing, like one of the heads there. And recently, just before the IPO, she came out with a lawsuit saying that there was some boys club activity going on, and the premise of the lawsuit essentially is,
right.
I think discrimination and stuff like that. My wondering is that in some of the documentation, supposedly she claims that one of her fighting points when she brought it up to some of the executive team about pricing was she wanted to change pricing. She's like, we can't do this, but the timing was not good because of the IPO. And in order to get the price that they were commanding for the IPO, they were showing a certain amount of pre-orders, and they knew that if possibly they would change the price, that something like this would probably happen where people would cancel their orders. So I want to know how in depth, like what was happening in the background, like if this is, and I believe her because I mean, why not? What was going on? What was the decisions that were being made, and how were those decisions impacting what's happening that we're seeing right now? Was this for no doubt in my mind, this has been going on for a while, I think, and they were deciding on what they were going to do about it. In that case, like, that's a lot of time to think about it, and then to come out like with what Raj said, the communication was a very, very dry and very like, this is what's happening. Thanks.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to know is like, how did that timeline happen, and what exactly was happening in the background? Because I've also seen some people say like, oh, RJ, maybe he didn't have as much input and it's on the C-suite team or whatnot. But I do think that he probably knew exactly what was going on, and he was the spearhead at it.
Had to come from somewhere.
Yep.
This wasn't
It was just
an
such
overnight thing.
such a huge amount of time between unveiling the car, showing it off, and people were so excited, right? A $70,000 electric truck or SUV was so cool. I mean, it's been years now. There's so many other choices and stuff. Like the Ioniq 5 jumps out as, I'm not saying it's a direct equivalent or anything.
No,
The Model Y has third row. I think it's going to be tough. And now if they're selling the $70,000 truck for 86,000 or closer to 90, whatever it is, it's a tough thing. Maybe it's a good lesson learned for like show off a product and try to get it shipped as quickly as possible. And what I find interesting with Rivian is they had tons of money, right? So if you don't have money, you got to get reservations and try to fund this whole thing. But they were fundraising throughout, and so it just, I don't know. It kind of makes me realize, yeah, that's probably why Ford stopped taking reservations for the Lightning. Is I think that price is going to go up too.
I was going to say something about that. That's something that I think that, like, in a way, Legacy Auto has done right. That I've not seen, like, Tesla doesn't really cap their reservations. So, like, right now I could order, like Hertz, I could order 100,000 vehicles at today's price, and Tesla, would have to over time honor that price, or at least if it was an order and there was a contract. But I do think that is an interesting point, and I also, we can get into the little bit of word nomenclature of pre-order versus reservation and all that. But yeah, if Ford is one of the few that I've actually heard that closed off reservations. It's more Legacy Auto that closes off those pre-order books. And that might be something that honestly some of the newer players might have to learn. And that's maybe what Rivian realizes, oh shoot, we have to fulfill those orders as prices climb, and that's why I'm kind of worried to their orders that are going to be delivered 2 years from now at the same price that they're reserved at in 2018. That's why I'm worried.
Yeah.
Someone said in our comments, this gives precedent for the $40,000 Cybertruck. So to maybe start to segue over to the Cybertruck with the sightings that we had last week, an obvious thought for a lot of people right now is, what is it going to be for the Cybertruck? How much is that going to cost? It seems incredibly low at 40,000 if that still happens. Just
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think you brought it up on, the whole pre-order, piece is that okay, or reservation piece. So I'm placing a reservation, but that doesn't lock in the price. I remember when the Model 3 announcement happened, it was pitched as here's a $35,000 vehicle. And I pre-ordered it, and in my mind, I thought, well, there's no way this is going to be 35K. So I budgeted about 50. My Model 3, after everything was said and done, was around 60, but I added the wheels and I paid extra for paint. So give or take, but it was nowhere near 35. So there's that piece, and so I think that's what people are also looking at as far as the truck is concerned, is that when it actually comes out, are you really? I mean, if you ask me, I don't think we're going to see a rear-wheel drive Cybertruck for, what was it, 39K? I think Rivian's seeing it, and maybe Ford is also seeing it too, and that's why they had to cut their stuff off. But I think whether it be the time or whatever it is that we're seeing, that price point is very hard to achieve. And that goes back to what kind of Elon alluded to on a response to John on Twitter, is that, it's the affordability factor. Like, making an affordable truck is what's difficult.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the other part of that too, for me at least, is they're adding so much to it. I wanted that simple truck. As many of you may know, I reserved 50 Cybertrucks with the intent to rent them all out, primarily here from California, but across the West Coast. And what it seems like Elon's done is started to add in other features from some of these other trucks, quad motor being one of them, crab walk from the Hummer. It almost feels like he's just taking from the ideas of the others. And so $40,000 just, I wanted that. I don't necessarily know if what I want is what they're going to bring to market anymore. So.
Well, I think, after you go through the configuration process and you pick the things that, there was limited options that you could pick with Cybertruck when you initially pre-ordered. So it was like, do you want the tri-motor or whatever?
And do you want FSD? That was the only two.
Right, exactly. Whereas like on the the Rivian configurator, you could pick like your interior. I kind of like that, right?
I like that. I'm gonna go. But go get that website.
But you could pick all the things that you wanted, and when I put my pre-order in, the power tonneau cover was actually included. I didn't have to pay extra, and now that's a $3,000 upgrade. And I, watched Sandy Monroe's interview with RJ a couple weeks back that he put out, and RJ actually specifically said that they're having a really hard time with the tonneau cover. And so this kind of like, oh, well, that must have been a hint indicator for us for now looking back. That's, they've been struggling with this for a while, and so this is the solution. Now it's $3,000. The camp kitchen was $5,000. Now it's $6,500. Yeah, I don't. I'm sorry. I'll stop talking about Rivian.
No. One thing that we missed earlier, and again, this is meant to be a free chat. Wherever the conversation takes us. Have you guys actually seen what they say about the manual tonneau cover?
No, I haven't.
So it's $1,800 instead of $3,000. It's manual, and it's 4 slats. I don't know what material they're made out of. It's 4 slats and probably the slot itself. I don't know if that comes standard whether or not you get that manual cover. But the way they talk about it is it's 4 slats that come with a bag, and they recommend storing that bag when it's not applied in the gear tunnel. And I'm sure that would be fine, but it definitely is an interesting pivot to still charge $1,800 for a couple plastic, maybe polycarbonate of some sort, pieces of a cover and a bag.
Yeah, there's no way. That's like the old school days of when you had to like remove your T-top glass off the roof, and then like what do you do with this piece now? If it
Yeah.
starts raining, are you gonna be able to put it on? Yeah, no,
So
no,
just one
gotta
last
go.
piece, since we did come back to this topic though, how do we feel like emotionally about Rivian? Like I've definitely been one that like, because I'm very much, or I see myself, whether it's accurate or not, as kind of an outdoorsman. I enjoy that, camping in a car. Actually, the business that I own for everything I do is called Kilowatt Camping LLC. So I'm emotionally still bought in. I'm frustrated by some of this, but I see this as more of a communications thing. I'm not as worried about them as a company, but am I alone in that feeling, or where are you guys with them as a company today?
I- well, I think I'm still emotionally rocked. It's like I wouldn't say it's a breakup, but it's a betrayal of trust. It's like,
Yeah,
like I caught you talking to that other girl. You didn't cheat, but I don't know. I don't know how to relate that, but
that's fair. No,
it,
that's
like, and I think, I spoke to RJ. The guy comes across as a very connected with the people, trustworthy guy. I remember we were talking, and some lady got his attention and was talking about her need for how she wants to use the truck for her horses. And he took note of that. He could speak to it like very well, very well versed on it, and wanted to get some feedback from her so that they could think about how they could implement stuff. And I thought that was really, really cool. So I I like to say that everyone can make mistakes as long as they, come back from that. They apologize from it. They recognize. So I held on. And it's funny because my wife is completely not interested in electric, you know, the electric world. But like I tell her the stories and she finds it interesting. I'm like, oh, guess what? Rivian went back. They went back on what they said. They're going to honor their pricing. So I thought what they did was great. I I want them to do well. I want them to succeed. I like them as a company. I like what they stand for. Um, I'll bring up one thing is that when I went to go test drive the Rivian,
up in
um,
Sonoma.
there were yes, there were some people very excited about their what do they call it? Tank turn, which was like a big
Mm.
advertised thing early on, right? And they were just like, no, no. They kept deflecting it until finally we got a more realistic answer as to what happened to tank turn. And tank turn is essentially they've shelved it. The truck is not, as far as I know, as today, is not going to come with tank turn. And the biggest reason is that they said that they felt that the tank turn was not necessary and was going to be used to like tear up the ground and not treat mother nature well, and it's not reflective of the brand and what they wanted to showcase.
Yeah.
Now, how far that's true, but I mean, I listened to it and I was like, okay, that does make sense. Does anyone really need the tank turn? I could argue at that. So I'm still rooting for them.
Yeah, but
I
you're bringing up a good point where they've walked back a few things. Rivian
Mhm.
has kind of started at one place and they started to walk back some things. And do we still feel the same way about them after those things? Tank turn isn't the reason why you buy a Rivian, but it can also be something that you were looking forward to. And, if it was the Hummer, for example, that would probably be the one thing that it has that makes it, $20,000 more valuable. So that is a very interesting point to highlight. They did pull that back. It does seem to me like it was sure environmental reasons. Also, probably pulls pretty heavily on the car, on the truck, and then it's also like if you're not on a flat surface, you're like a spinning top. You're gonna slide wherever you're. I don't know if it was like safe or smart to begin with, but kind of getting back to an earlier point, like you kind of made that promise. You kind of made that commitment. That's what got a lot of people. I think that was maybe the first video I ever saw was, I don't know if it was the first. It was probably the second video I ever saw about the Rivian that really got me more curious about the brand. And so, sure, you can do it. But yeah, that brings up a good question about what claims are necessary to deliver upon or what features. Yeah.
Right.
Have all of you guys driven it, the R1T?
Yes.
Nope.
Yes. Ricky,
Yes.
you?
So those two have. So I'm going to become a contributor for Fully Charged, and I am meeting with Rivian next week in LA, so I'll have a chance to drive it. And that might be what's holding me from being a bigger fan, I think, is just, To me, it's a truck. I'm not a truck guy. Ryan, to your point, I'm an indoorsman. I'm very proud of that.
You're proud of that.
And I'm an avid indoorsman. So for that reason, I haven't really thought too much about it, but driving it might be just the thing to get me over that hurdle. So for me, Rivian is much more of a kind of in the distance. I've watched them. I want them to do well. I want all the electric companies to do well, but what they're going through seems like the growing pains that are going to be pretty normal for companies that don't make cars. For Ford to stop taking reservations, no big deal. They sell 1 million F-150s a year. But for Rivian, they're thinking, why would we turn away a potential customer who we can lock in today, as opposed to having them out in the wild when there's more and more truck options out there? But I think driving it would be the thing that maybe galvanizes my opinion about it. But right now, um, I understand from a business perspective why they had to do it, but I also know a lot of people who are pissed. You guys are probably pretty similar as well. I had like 5 or 6 of my friends call me and tell me how mad they were and if they're going to cancel the reservation. 2 of them have reached out since since they walked it back, but I do think there's a sense of betrayal or something where you feel like you were told one thing and you get another, but it does happen. I mean, to Raj's point, Tesla has never made a $35,000 Model 3. That was the whole thing. They
That
never
actually,
will.
no, that's not true. They did.
No? Yeah.
Yeah.
6 months, maybe a year.
Yeah, if that. It might have been 3 months.
Very great.
It was,
And it was kind of the thing where you had to order long ago, and they would deliver it, and just a few.
Yep.
The funny thing too is there's 2 parts to this. You could be an investor or a customer, and they're completely different mindsets, right? Because if you're an investor, like if you own Tesla stock, you don't want them to make the $35,000 Model 3. Why would you want them to make this car that has no margins, isn't propelling the company forward in any meaningful way? Sell the $50,000 or $60,000 performance, have some margin, and go build the Cybertruck in another factory, like grow the brand, right? So, but as a customer, you might think, I was told about a $35,000.
All right. Sorry about that. It looks like we're back live again. Sorry, technical difficulties. I went to change a screen and the whole thing shut down, but we are back. Thank you for your patience. Sorry about that, Ricky. I interrupted you.
I'm sure it wasn't very important, so you're okay. Now, just really quick summary. I think as an investor versus as a customer, your opinion will be different. As a customer, all you care is getting your
on technical support.
All right. Once again, we're back. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop changing any settings on my computer. We'll just
yeah.
talk about it.
Stop it, Ryan.
All right. Sorry. So I think maybe you're talking about the pricing and whatnot. It's good to maybe transition into talking about Lucid and what they're doing, just given their price prohibitive for many. They're much higher up market. And it just, my mind goes to them. When we talk about the 2 startups, when we talk about Rivian, we've got to talk about Lucid and what they're doing. So high level, I guess I'll kick us off. Obviously, they just reported their deliveries. They were not, exceptional in terms of their numbers. They were hoping to deliver 520 before the end of the year, and they waited just until the end of February to announce that they had not. They had delivered about 300 so far, and so that's a little bit concerning in my mind. Rivian, the one thing they've done well is deliver in relatively higher numbers, but Lucid, a company that is trying to sell many vehicles in high volumes is not yet doing that. So,
well, here's a question for you, Ryan. Is that from what I've heard, is that majority, if not maybe all, the Rivian deliveries are all to employees, whereas Lucid is actually delivering to customers. While may not be a lot, these guys, I think all these companies, they're small, they're new. This is their first vehicle, so I think some of us who are on the Tesla train, which is now like racing down the track, building factories, shelling out cars left and right, we forget what it was like back in 2012 and before when we were doing Model S. And so on the Tesla side. So for Lucid, I think I had a chance to actually, check out the vehicle, drive the vehicle. I'm seeing a lot of attention to detail. I think where Lucid is falling short is a little bit on the software side and some of these things. But I think, and so a lot of people argue, well, they're shipping a half-baked vehicle. So I think while they may not be producing a whole lot right now, they're racing to keep deliveries going, but at the same time continue to reiterate software updates. Most of the owners that have them are saying, "Oh, there you go."
All right. Once again, I apologize. It seems as if it was just an audio issue causing, or my mic and my camera all being on separate systems causing it to crash. So now I'm just going to go through the Mac mic, as long as you guys can hear me. And we're just going to use these headphones. And I apologize for
You're
any
good.
disruptions. Hopefully, we'll get this fixed before the next one. So Lucid. Raj, this time I
You
have
gotta.
to
This
do.
is part of the fun of going live. You know what you get on the Kilowatt Hour? You get all the. This is part of the fun.
Yeah, no, it's too bad. Only because I know I've used this system before, but I've never used it for live on my own channel. So thank you everyone for watching and for your patience. Let's
All right,
let's get
Lucid.
back to it.
What do we know?
So
Where did I leave off on? I don't even
300
remember.
units instead of the 500 hopeful, and the 500 was by late last year. 300 is by, I think, when their call was. I think they only delivered a couple hundred, or sorry, 150 something by last year. So I think you mentioned that they're delivering to customers rather than Rivian, who had delivered to.
Yeah, I think what I've seen, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me that 95%, or maybe all of the vehicles that Rivian has delivered has been to employees only. I could be wrong, and there may be a couple of customer ones, but Lucid seems to be really delivering to customers. While the number may not be high, I still give them credit, right? These are companies that are brand new to this space. They're first vehicles. They're just delivering. And, I just remind people that there's a lot of Tesla owners now that don't remember what it was like back in 2012 when Tesla was first doing the Model S. It's extremely hard. So these guys are going through it. And so it's kind of like I look at it as that, hey, as long as they're delivering and as long as that number is going up, I think with Lucid, I just recently got to drive and check out one. And so there's definitely some improvement to be made on software. And I think they're fighting this battle of getting deliveries done, but also constantly improving the vehicle via software updates that are coming out, every couple of days, if not every week, and they're constantly improving the vehicle. So I think they're doing that and they're getting it out. But overall, the car is a pretty damn good car. I mean, I get it. It's not appealing to everyone, and different different flavors for different people is fine.
Well, you just
But
experienced one too. You also just got a chance to spend some time with one.
yeah, absolutely.
Was that your
And
first time?
I mean, first time. Yeah, first time sitting in it. I'm not a very luxury vehicle person. It's a luxury vehicle. It is a Mercedes, and I don't. That's not my style. But there were things that I liked about the vehicle. There were things that I didn't like about the vehicle, and I think that's how it's always going to be. I wouldn't say that everyone's 100% satisfied with their vehicle, but as long as it checks off most of the boxes, you know, it's good for them. And I thought it was a quality vehicle. Panel gaps were good. The overall build was good. It looked very luxurious, very high end. Some of the placements of things I thought could have been better. Like, I don't really care for the cockpit screen because you're now not only looking over to your right, but now you're looking down too, which I thought was very unsafe. But outside of that, it's got some power to it. It's got some kick. So
Absolutely. And I guess, have either of you, also Ricky or Lacey, have you experienced the Lucid?
Go ahead, Ricky.
Oh yeah, so Ryan, you and I were at the plant unveiling, right? So we got a chance to drive around in it. It was really fun actually. We got a chance to floor it and I mean, just hard braking on the freeway and full acceleration and stuff. It's a really fun car, to your point. And I actually know two people who have them, so they are shipping to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know anybody who has a Rivian. Do any of you guys know anybody with a Rivian?
I do, but just for my ex-Tesla friends that now work at Rivian. I don't know anyone
Yeah.
outside the company.
the one person, yeah, same with me. The
Yeah.
person that I know is an employee.
Okay. And yeah, it's a great car. The range and the efficiency and stuff, I think, is a good look at how we keep pushing the boundary there. I think they're doing some things differently than Tesla, and I think these companies will see different approaches and they'll all learn, and all these cars are going to get better. Whereas Rivian is a completely different animal. It's not the most efficient vehicle. It never claimed to be. It has a bigger battery pack, but it's also still really cool, and it appeals to the outdoorsmen, the lifestyle people, buyers that want to buy it. So, yeah, Lucid's numbers being down, I think, is a little bit interesting. But to Roger's point, early days. Let's hope this year, by the end of this year, both companies have a really good ramp, and they're making cars by the thousands a month.
Yeah. Lacey?
I don't think there's any cause for to be concerned at this point because it is so early for them to be producing cars. I think the thing that I don't really like is that, like to Raj's point, is the software needs work. They shipped cars that are in a very high price bracket, 60,000 plus dollars for vehicles that don't have the Dream Drive, which are just basic features that you can get on a Ford Explorer or anything else. That is a cause of concern for me. For if I was a customer getting my car, I wouldn't be happy with that, but I do understand the growing pains. But I'm not I don't have one. I don't have a pre-order for one, so it's
And that's
not for me to say. But I have a ton of experience with luxury vehicles for my job. Like 99% of my experience is with luxury vehicles, so I'm very, very particular on it. I do think it's very great quality, but there are just some things that when you're in that class of vehicle, you should have baked into the vehicle already when it's shipped to customers.
So
I again don't think there's concern right now because they are ramping up, but yeah, that's just my opinion on it.
John Rittinger's video was a great video, and we're going to have him on the show in a couple weeks. But John Rittinger has his Lucid, and yes, initially it did not come with any of the Dream Drive features. Now it comes with, I believe, adaptive cruise control at least, but like initially it didn't come with cruise control at all. And so I agree with you that it's amazing they shipped it without it, but it sounds like as a business case they almost had to. I don't know why, because Ricky and I, when we were out there, we experienced the cruise control working, and I think it might have even been adaptive cruise control then. So I don't know what, behind the scenes, maybe it was just localized to Arizona and it wasn't ready to be used elsewhere. But yeah, I agree that was pretty surprising that they shipped a car without even basic cruise control. They are working to improve that, and that does give me hope because John Rittinger is like the only example I'm aware of where, yes, he took delivery of the car without some features, and they're starting to actually implement them. So his channel gave me hope for that.
I wonder if they're just using that to their advantage, right? The whole software thing is like, hey, listen, we can half bake that, but the actual vehicle, the mechanics need to be on point. And I would say that there's nothing wrong with the mechanics of the vehicle. It functions perfectly, and everything else are like, yeah, we'll fix it over the air. I wouldn't say it's the best way to do things, but.
Well, I will say this points out one big difference between a company like Lucid and a company like Rivian. Is that Lucid is doing a ton of stuff on their own. They're not buying things off the shelf, whereas Rivian, they are doing some stuff on their own, but they are buying a lot of stuff off the shelf as of this point. We've seen in their new release that with the whole price change thing that they are going to be developing their own dual motor setup, and that's going to be coming in-house and not supplied by Bosch. But I think that's just, part of the whole growing pains when you're developing this stuff and taking that on your own. And we've seen it with Tesla. So when you take it on yourself, it is going to be a lot more challenging. And there's a lot more people that you have to work with in many other departments than your own in order to make this stuff go.
You made a good point about how, where the suppliers are coming from. And one of the things that I just find interesting, one specific, from a consumer standpoint, I don't know if people necessarily care or know half the time, but like Tesla's a great example where because they are so vertically integrated, they're able to push features that we didn't know we could even have in our cars. And I think one of the best examples that we can talk about for all three of these companies is kind of the Sentry mode, the dash cam that Tesla has, and that Rivian has effectively with their gear guard. And I would think that Rivian using, I don't know, but I'm assuming Bosch cameras or they've actually gone further to push additional software there, whereas Lucid seems like they're behind. So it seems like, oddly enough, that Lucid seems to be more on the hardware game and not yet there on the software, and Rivian seems to be the opposite, working kind of more on the software and that experience first. So it's a weird place to be. I historically always felt that maybe Rivian was a little bit further along, but especially being that hardware takes longer to make. And Lucid definitely seems like they've got the better hardware, at least in their powertrain, that they might be further along. It's hard to know.
It's funny that you make that point. It's exactly right. Just one example was Alexa. works well on the Rivian. From what I tested, I couldn't get it to do anything on the Lucid. Not even unlock doors, which is like, come on, that's simple.
Yeah. Ricky, anything else? I think we've got
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
was
categories to get into too, but
yeah, really quick. I think that is what you Lacey, that was actually brilliant. I don't think people realize that or think about that enough, but that is where I've always really had a huge level of respect for Lucid. And I don't think people fully realize, but it's really hard to do everything yourself, but that's where they're able to get this level of efficiency. I mean, they've done some things really, really well, and I think they'll start to be looked at as, along with Tesla, as like, here's how you do things right, and that they've done it to that level. Uh, Riv- Rivian kind of reminds you a little bit of like the Ford Mach-E, which people think the Ford Mach-E is a great car. It is, but it doesn't show as much of a infrastructure and like architectural development as other companies who we see as behind. So like, for example, I would say GM has disappointed me hugely for lately, but I do think they are investing more deeply in the less glamorous, less sexy stuff. But eventually, when that does come online, when Ultium batteries are actually flowing and some of this stuff is able to be reused, I think their advantage will start to show. Whereas like Ford just jumped in and started building the Mach-E, but it doesn't feel as thought out as far as like a larger strategy. So I mean, yeah, let's hope Lucid is able to do the Gravity, their second car, much more quickly and smoothly because of all these investments and stuff. But time will tell. It's really kind of a vertical integration game and paying the cost of it.
well said. Well, I think you already mentioned Ford, which brings up the kind of, I think we'll kind of get through some of these other categories pretty quickly, but like Ford is definitely one that was top of my mind this week. As many of you know, I used to own a Ford Mustang Mach-E. I do agree with you, Ricky, in saying like, it is a great car. And honestly, for the customer who wants it, I would not talk them out of it. It's great for a lot of reasons. It's pretty similar to the Model Y, but it has some more legacy feel, a little bit more creature comforts. It's a little bit quieter than my Model Ys. So I definitely see why people like it. But I find it really interesting what Ford's new strategy is. It seems to be, there's Ford Blue, which is their gas cars, their internal combustion engine business, and Ford Model E, which, for anyone that doesn't already know already, Tesla tried to name the Model 3 the Model E. It was 3 horizontal lines. And then Ford said, no, you can't do that. We actually have the trademark for that. We have the Model T. We're also going to have the Model E eventually. And everyone kind of laughed at it at the time. It's like, really? If you were going to use it, you would have already used it. And now we're seeing them using it in an interesting way for the name of their business units, which I would never have expected, especially with Ford Blue. And I tweeted this somewhere, and that like that's how they've been indicating their cars are electric. Like if you look at the Lightning head on, the word mark is in black, but behind it there's a framing of blue. So their American flag on the back is black with blue behind it. And so I'm a little bit surprised that they chose this specific naming convention. I don't know how much it matters to the end consumer, but I'm curious what you guys' thoughts are on this kind of business segmentation that Ford's doing to address electric vehicles as separate from their internal combustion engine.
I mean, do you really think that they're gonna call a car a Model E now after all this? Like, they're probably just like, I gotta throw this somewhere. Let's have a business unit that's called Model E. That's how I saw it. Was like, as like, are you really gonna try to use that Model E nomenclature?
Yeah, but they don't have to.
But okay,
just because they have it.
Listen, hear me out real quick though, is because the reason why I'm saying this is because I spent a lot of years working for Lincoln, and I can't tell you how many times people came up to us, MK, what, Z, whatever. Oh God, I hate the numbers, the letters. Please give them names. So a long time ago, Ford had reshifted, and they were like, okay, we got to get rid of this. And that's why now you see the Lincoln Corsair, the Aviator, they're bringing all those nameplates back. So in my opinion, I think they were like, well, we made this decision a long time ago. So how are we going to go back and say like, okay, Model E, it still follows that same old
but they didn't have
path
to
that
use
they
it.
were on.
Just because you have a trademark and people will hate you for hoarding it, but no one's going to, only Tesla fans are going to remember that.
But we're talking about it, and press is press.
Sure.
So,
I just don't think we would be talking about it unless they brought it up. But go ahead, Ricky.
I actually have a completely different take on this. I don't know that the name matters at all. I don't think it's going to be like forward facing. It's not going to be like the Ford Model E Type 2. Like that's just going to be a mouthful. But what they're doing, I think, is brilliant. The biggest concern I've had with the legacy automakers is their dealer networks and stuff. I think are just going to cause them a huge amount of strife. It's already, you've already seen it. Like the Mercedes is marked up 50 grand. Like all these Mach-E's are marked up 20 grand and stuff. So what Ford could do is, as a legacy maker, you have one of two choices. You can buy out these franchisees, which is billions and billions of dollars, or leave that alone, call that your gasoline lineup, spin off a new company that doesn't fall under the purview of the dealership network, and go do it like Lucid and Rivian are doing, right? So Ford, legacy, whatever, stays alone and does its thing. And now this new business unit, which now is responsible for all the electric stuff, can go operate like Rivian, Lucid, and Tesla. And you don't have to pay the franchisees out, and you get all the benefits of going direct to consumer, which I think is critical for electric vehicles. So I think it's a brilliant move. The name, I don't care.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that GM did with the Cadillac brand. They said, hey, we're going to buy people out. You know, that was kind of one way of doing it. It was expensive, and I don't even know if it's fully done. But I think.
And Cadillac is small. Like for every 100 GM dealers, only one of them is a Cadillac dealer. So that wasn't the same level of capital expenditure that Ford would have to go through.
It almost would seem like this was a required step, and almost like that we may not be able to buy electric cars from traditional Ford dealers, and this enables them to do that. It's only direct to consumer through newer.
It doesn't. So this is the problem, guys, is that this is all still under Ford. So Ford still has their existing relationships with all their dealers, so they cannot, under franchise laws, go separate unless they completely split it off, which is not what they're doing. I wish they were, because I agree with you, Ricky, 100%. I think it would be amazing if they could separate it off. But I've read a lot about some of the quotes that Jim Farley has put out there, and he said that they're going to have a talk with their dealers in the coming weeks and months, and that they're going to have to opt in. Well, there are already, I think, out of the 3,100 dealers or something like that they have, 28 or like 75% of them right now are already EV certified and had to opt in to pay in order to be an EV certified dealer, which requires you to pay, I think, somewhere between like $30,000 and $50,000, because it requires training for all your sales staff and charging infrastructure and all this other stuff. So what I want to know is like, okay, so what's going to be the difference between the ones that you're saying that have to opt in for this new Model E format, and what about these EV certified dealers that already paid this money to go in and be EV certified? You know, where's the clarification there? But I did see a quote from him that said, we are going to rely on you, get ready. Like, we are going to rely on the dealers.
Dealers, okay.
Jim Farley said that. Yep. He said, so we're going to rely on your specialization. The specialization is key. Can't remember exactly how it was phrased, but it was like, get ready, dealers, like, specialization is coming for you. So they're going the dealer route still. Go ahead, Raj.
No, but it's just funny because like the dealer's spending now that whatever that 30, 40K, certification. If I'm a dealer, I'm like, well, how am I going to make that back? Let me add some cost on this electric vehicle that I'm selling. I don't know. Yeah.
If you're not an EV certified dealer, you can't sell any EVs though. So that's the thing, is that it's probably the ones that didn't opt in are the ones that are in these little tiny towns that there's no infrastructure and there's no real possibility, or they're going to probably sell out to another big dealer in the coming years. As we've seen, there's been so much consolidation in the pandemic years that these big guys are just eating everybody up. So then maybe they'll have to fork it out.
It seems like this might be a long play for Ford. They're kind of segmenting to see what it does and then make some decisions down the road. It seems like it's kicking it down the road. But I think we all kind of agree that this is very much a play for the dealers. Like I want to believe there's some degree of the play, and it probably is some degree internally of the play on where the engineering teams are allocated, and enabling more clean sheet engineering as well. But I think we're kind of generally at least all saying here, we don't know, but it all seems like it's mostly centered on the dealers, and it's not a perfect solution yet. So.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
All right. Well, it's definitely, just I hope the best for Ford. Again, they seem to be one of the legacy players that is moving in the right direction, and that, they're going to have to figure this out, and hopefully this is the first step towards more good steps for consumers. I think I'll leave that one there. Other topics that I kind of wanted to cover, I'm curious just kind of in the last few minutes here because I don't want to keep you guys too long despite my audio technical issues. But the Polestar O2 concept, the Stellantis Dare Forward presentation, Lotus Type 132, their electric SUV. There's also the Amelia this week. Anything that you guys are looking forward to there? Hyundai's electrification strategy or the Kia 2030 roadmap. So anything related to any of those topics that you guys want to talk about in the last 5-10 minutes?
I'll say watching a drone launch from a vehicle is sick, and everyone needs one because it's just like, why not? That's cool. That's my 2 cents on that one. That's the Polestar. For those of you who have not seen it, go and watch the clip of a drone launching from a vehicle and following it around like a cinematic movie being filmed.
Hasn't there been another? Wasn't there another brand that claimed they do that? I feel like Porsche or someone like that said they were going to do a drone out of the back before. Maybe I'm thinking wrong, but I feel like I've seen this before.
Remember.
I've seen this movie, and I've actually seen. We've all seen it in a movie. It's
Yes.
they did that in Blade Runner too, but I feel like we've all seen this movie like 2 or 3 years ago as well, where there was a drone out of the back of a car. If someone knows, drop in the comments below.
No, just that and Hyundai. I want to call out Hyundai. I think I have not gotten to see or sit inside one. I saw your video, Ryan, but like my parents are big. They're just hardcore Hyundai fans. I think Hyundai is, they've been around for a while. They make a quality, long-lasting product for an affordable price. So it's very interesting to see them coming into the EV space. And really trying to bring that expertise into electric vehicles and offering that, because people that are brand new to this electric space is still very new for some people, and they immediately think that electric vehicle is expensive. So to really bring that cost down, help squash that thinking, and then show, it's easier. It's an easier pill to swallow with, I think, Hyundai, especially when you're, comparing out the gas prices and the oil changing and brakes and so forth. So
yeah, I just briefly want to add to that to people who don't know already, who haven't watched any of our reviews on it. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 is definitely one of the ones that I'm more excited about. It charges on the same 800 volt architecture of the Lucid, which, obviously given the range, it's not going to charge quite as fast, but you can get 70% of your roughly 300 miles in 18 minutes. And that to me is like game changer. You're not doing anything you barely have time to run to the restroom and get back. Like that's almost cannonball like type of charging that that Lucid
Charge across America.
There it is.
But yeah, I agree with you that the excitement for Hyundai and the Kia, like there's a lot of brands that aren't doing it right or are taking older technology, and one of the less expensive brands taking new technology and delivering some of the best tech is exciting, especially as you mentioned, for like a reliable brand, for a brand that people trust. That's exciting. Have you guys, Lacee, Ricky, have you guys experienced the Hyundai or the Kia Genesis even?
I have worked with Genesis in the past, and I'm very, very impressed with the level of quality of their materials. The technology, like you said, I think is incredible for what you get. The price point, the value is really there. And I feel like they're just pulling out all the stops they possibly can right now in the EV space to compete. And they're, I think, doing such a great job. Like you said, charging speeds. I love the V2L capabilities. I just want to be able to plug in my laptop somewhere or even charge my e-bike when I'm out camping and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I think they're really coming out with some compelling offerings, and just, little things that, like the heads-up display as an option that has the augmented reality feature, or the surround view camera that you can look at on your app. Well, it's almost like a, Tesla's, where you can look at the live view of the cameras at that moment. But I just think they're doing such a great job, and the price point is reasonable for what you get. And I posted something earlier or last night or something, I can't remember when it was, but they made in this announcement the strategy that they confirmed EV9 is coming. So they previewed the concept at the LA Auto Show, which you probably saw there, right, Ryan?
I did. It didn't seem like a realistic vehicle. Well, no, the EV9 was more realistic. Yeah.
It's a concept, so yes, there are some changes that's going to happen, but they are going to make a production version of it. And it was interesting to see because I said, oh, here's the Kia EV9 might be, since it's a third row huge full size SUV, that might be a good contender against the R1S now that all this, cancellation until they announced today that they were going to reinstate or forgive those price increases for pre-order holders. But I was like, this could be a contender. And the comments that I got were kind of interesting because I heard the comments before in the past, and you hear it all the time in the business about like this brand, oh no, I don't like a Lincoln because it's for a grandpa, or the key thing for the Kia was that people were like, no, they're trash, they're this or that. And I'm like, really? That's interesting. Like, I think that you're thinking about the stuff that like when they first launched maybe wasn't too good, and then they changed the warranty to a 10-year 100,000-mile warranty, and they've progressively gotten better and better, and now the tech's good and the cars are pretty good. And yeah, I just think they're actually pretty compelling offering, and I really love what they're doing. It's exciting to see them. I think they said 14 new EVs for Kia and 17 for Hyundai, so 31 new electric vehicles under that group brand umbrella, including Genesis, and also Kia's going to have an electric truck, and they're going to build it here in the States.
Wow, you just dropped some facts on us. That's awesome.
Bombs.
Dude, I was like blown away by these two things. I was like freaking out. I was just telling these guys earlier when we were in the background. I'm like, I was like that cat meme where you just typing nonstop. It's just like going crazy because I couldn't just believe all this stuff that's been dropping this week. But those two, Hyundai and Kia, are doing some amazing things. I'm really excited for them.
Yeah.
And a new platform's coming.
Yep.
A new platform.
It kind of reminds me of Japan in the 70s when they built like the little compact cars, and a lot of Americans thought, what is this Japanese, it's not reliable, this and that. And then 15 years go by and they're basically the best selling cars. And Japan, I think, is one of the best manufacturing countries in the world. I think South Korea is going through that now, and they're actually uniquely poised because they don't just make EVs, they do all the batteries and stuff. Q-cell solar panels come from South Korea. LG and Samsung and all these companies are there. So they're not an OPEC country. They don't care if they lose oil revenue. They're like completely invested. So like the incentive structure is in place, and I think they're going to be. It'll be like Honda and Toyota are for. Like I'm Indian, and Indian people only buy Hondas and Toyotas. Like they're perceived as like the highest quality products. Like Indians never buy American cars. It's a
never.
Corolla or an Accord or a minivan. So I think. Yeah, I think South Koreans will have the same. I think it'll be the same sort of vibe in 10 years. In 2030, the Kias and Hyundais, I think, are going to be perceived that way. And it does take time to change minds, but because I remember those old Kias from like the 96 Kia Sportage, they were absolute garbage. But they've come a long way, and I think it's going to be an interesting next 10 years for them. They're well poised for sure, and they're rolling out some great products right now. Which kind of makes me think about like Vietnam. Have you guys been hearing about VinFast? They've got some. Have you heard anything about VinFast? No, Ryan. I don't know if you have, but it's a Vietnamese company, and they're saying that they're going to be shipping cars this year, and they've got a 5-passenger SUV, and they even have a bigger SUV. So, talk about bringing other countries that historically didn't export cars into the equation. That's kind of the cool thing about electric vehicles is it kind of disrupts the power structures, but. There's a lot of news, and I'm glad we're doing a live show. But I think, Ryan, you got to do one of these shows every week or every two, because there's just too much happening now in the industry. There's like a critical mass, it feels like.
Yeah, totally.
Did we?
I'm back. I just once again little technical issues. Battery died, but I think for me at least it'd be good to have us wrap up here in a second because I am not fully prepared for all these technical issues that I'm experiencing.
That's what makes the show.
Yes.
This is what makes the show.
High level though, let's get some final thoughts. What are we looking ahead? Apple has an event this week. Every time Apple has an event, I always say, I hope that there's an Apple car on the horizon. So I'm hoping for more. There's the Amelia this week. Do you guys have any thoughts on anything you're looking forward to? In potential news or anything like that?
I'm just generally really excited. I mean, look at all this stuff like that's happening in the EV business, the investments, the people that are, what I was watching, I saw some clip on CNBC or something like that, and like they talk about EVs a lot. That is awesome. Like, I know there's so many SPACs and everything that companies that have IPO'd recently, but it's just so cool that it's becoming, I feel like, more mainstream after, all of us have been talking about it for so long. It still feels like an early adoption phase, but at the same time, it's like people are now just realizing, oh, well, this is a thing and we should probably start talking about it and considering it. And I've had many friends that I've converted and now they're not afraid to go to EV. So I'm so excited that there's this massive lineup of news on a daily basis, not only from the car side of the business, but scooters, e-bikes, they're all going bonkers and I just love it.
Anything else, guys? Final thoughts?
Yeah, really quick. Energy84 says, any way to watch the Charge Across America rally. So for anyone who who isn't familiar with this, can you guys let them know how they could catch that?
Well, go ahead, Lacee.
So as of right now, there were 2 airings on NBC Sports that happened at the end of the year, this past year, late December. And they are cutting together some pieces in order to pitch to a streaming platform and shopping that around right now to, I don't know if 100% for sure, but the last I heard was like Netflix and, the basic Amazon Prime and all that you would think of. But I haven't had any updates on it yet. But that would be a more extended version cut, which I think would be really helpful for people to watch because the 45 minutes was a little crammed and didn't get too much of the learning experience across that I thought it could. But if they do sell off this extended cut version, it's going to be more like an 8 series or an 8 episode report. So stay tuned because we don't know for sure, but apparently it's on the horizon that they're trying to sell it off to somebody.
Just high quick level on that. Lacee and I participated in a 10-day cross-country competition, 5 other teams driving electric vehicles coast to coast. We were kind of one of the more, if not the most experienced team. There was a couple other teams. We drove at the time that Mustang Mach-E that I owned, and I won't spoil it for anyone who doesn't already know, but we were at least competitive towards the end. And there was, across the 10 days, there were plenty of fun stories. It was a great group of people, again, different experience levels. We were sharing some of our expertise. They were teaching us other things. It was a really great time. And it's really unfortunate that, yes, at least for now, there's only been those 2 showings, and they were just an hour long to show the 10-day journey. And again, people learning, trials and tribulations, arguments, people. One of my favorite stories did make it was Craig and Janice, who we had one day was a scavenger hunt, and they actually didn't really find the things in the scavenger hunt. They found alternative items that happened to get points. So it was a journey for everyone, including the organizers. We all learned quite a bit about electric vehicles and what was happening back then, and I hope that they are able to do something like it again. At least if they don't make another version of it, which I obviously hope they do because there were a lot of great stories in that one. I think there'll be stuff like that going forward, and hopefully Lacee and I will keep you guys updated on that as well. Other closing thoughts? Any other questions?
I'll
Excited
take one
for
of
the
those
electric
Polestar
revolution.
Yeah.
Yes.
You said Fisker Ocean. Yeah, Fisker Ocean's another one that I'm excited for. If it's able to deliver at the price, which again, pricing being a major issue, but they seem incredibly lucrative at their price now. So. All right. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I really appreciate you guys' time. I appreciate everyone's patience, not just you guys here on the screen, but you guys watching on the internet. And hopefully, we'll have another one of these in a couple of weeks and be able to chat about a bunch of new exciting topics in the electric vehicle space. So once again, thank you for joining me, guys. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your opinions, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Thanks.